Well, welcome to noon. Welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to a midwinter's fall day. Hints of spring and hints of summer in the air. My name is Mark Bowers. I'm the Executive Director and founder of the Professional Development Consortium of Hampton Roads. Thank you all for being in attendance today. If the wheel moves you, we'd love you to take yourself off that blank screen and prepare and present yourself and participate as much as you care to. The Professional Development Consortium of Hampton Roads was established 5 years ago. We're celebrating our anniversary or birthday, yay to us. Our purpose is, if you don't already know, is provide educational guidance and help to those who lead community level or greater membership associations. So if you're here because you're from a professional society or a civic league or some other organization that revolves around a common interest or common practice, you're in the right place. If you're here from a nonprofit because you want to learn and you got a bunch of volunteers hanging around, you're still in the right place. If you're a competitor in the leadership and development field, if you're a competitor to Gary DePaul, our guest today, you're still welcome to be here. Anything you learn, anything you can do to elevate your community is what we're hoping for today. I see a couple folks have unblinked, and thank you for that. With very little further ado, I'm just going to turn this right over to my friend Gary DePaul, who I've known for several years in a professional relationship, and I'm happy to say it's turned into a friendship. And I've always admired what he's done as a practitioner and as a consultant in the field of leadership. So Gary, you want to take us on a little bit of a journey and chat with folks about how we get volunteers into that leadership pipeline, and then what the heck do we do with them?
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, Mark has been a guest on my podcast, Unlabeled Leadership. He's in the alum group there. So kudos to you, Mark. I'm going to share my screen. I have to bend over to do it. And 200 slides, something like that. No, I don't have 200 slides. This is all about working with volunteers and upping your game. I divided this into 3 parts. The first part includes you. It's called Let's Talk. So what's going to happen in that part is I'm going to unshare and let Mark take over. We're going to do some polls. And then I'm going to ask you, I'm telling you, let you know in advance so you know what's coming. I'm going to ask you, what are some of the challenges that you've had with volunteers and working with them? Before I get into that, I should say, then I'll talk a little bit about leadership and something about a life cycle, a volunteer life cycle, which will be, I think you'll find interesting and a little different. A little bit about me. I have been involved in associations for a little more than 20 years, I guess. I've been the president of the Tampa Bay ISPI chapter, the president of the Charlotte chapter for ISPI. I've been involved in some smaller groups of consultants that have met on a regular basis. They call themselves Charlotte Association of Consultants, and been to several different association events where I wasn't a board member. So I have a lot of experience there. And then at the international level with ISPI, International Society for Performance Improvement, for a number of years, I was the chair of the chapter's partnership committee and worked with several different chapters on helping them continue to thrive and handle some of their challenges and share best practices and things like that. So that's my background. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I'm having to lean over because I don't have my clicker with me. I don't need it. I can hold my mouse. And again, to start off with Let's Talk. And the first part of Let's Talk is going to be some poll questions to get us started, then I'm going to ask you that question about challenges. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to let Mark take over and share the first poll.
Okie dokie, here we go. Wish me luck.
I wish you luck. So this is the first poll, and if you can, just react to this. And when I say members, I mean members as a whole.
Well, I'm not voting this. Now, Gary, I assume that you're not. Are you voting in this?
I'm not voting in this.
All right. And neither is PDCHR Zoom monitor. Pretty much guarantee that. So looks like we probably got everybody in who's going to be in.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and close it.
Yeah. Can they see the poll as it happens?
I don't know. Let's ask them. Hey, Angela, are you seeing poll results or poll?
Nope, don't see him.
Okay.
I think when I hit end poll, Gary, it's
Yeah.
up, right?
Try end poll and let's see what happens.
See it now.
Okay. So there you go. So two people agreed with that and somewhat agreed for the remainder part of you. Let's go on to poll 2.
Alrighty.
And this is, again, my board is highly engaged.
I'm looking around. I don't think I see anybody from my board here, so. Anybody else want to share in? There's always somebody's got to break that tie. Perfect. All right, I think we're about there.
So 2 agree, 2 somewhat agree, and 1 disagree. So that's pretty much what I would expect. Let's go on to poll 3.
There we go.
This is an interesting one. Overall, board members are highly self-directed.
Yeah, I would have put money on the vote breaking like this. See what we got there.
Okay, so 1 agree, somewhat agree, disagree. And I have a feeling it's a mix that some people are more engaged than others on a particular board, or that's my experience. Let's go on to poll 4.
All right. We should have changed this without naming names.
I
think we got it. Any surprises there, Gary?
No, no surprises there. And for me, it's just there's a tendency of 2 or 3 people lifting the heavy load, and several people are just sort of there. So let's go to the last one.
All right.
Poll 5.
There you go.
So we struggle to find new board members. Do you agree? Somewhat agree, disagree?
All right, all in? 4 in. Somebody's still thinking about it, but we'll go. Let's go ahead and wrap this one. There we go. Everybody in? Wow, Gary, I gotta tell you, I'd have lost money on this bet.
Yeah, I think I would have done so as well.
Maybe it's important to couple that with the previous one. We struggle to find new board members, but you can get them to do anything.
Yeah.
Anyways,
So I'm just adjusting my chat so I could see anybody that does any post anything on the chat. So we could stop sharing the poll. That gives me a little bit of insight. What I'd like to know and hear from you is just explain in your own words. You can either chat or you can speak up. What are some of the challenges that you experience with your board, with working with people on your board and with membership and volunteers? And Mark, you could stop the poll, take the poll down.
I thought for sure I did. I wonder I don't even see it up. Okay.
Let me try it.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So my name's Leslie Claridge and I'm with Reach Reading Enriches All Children. And I've been managing volunteers on and off as part of my many nonprofit hats for probably about a little over 20 years. And I'm the assistant director here at Reach. And oddly enough, and I think, I don't know, one of the main issues that I have probably with volunteers over the year is that sometimes you have a core group of volunteers who, some would complain that maybe you have volunteers who maybe don't take initiative. But in my experience, sometimes you have that core group of volunteers that take too much initiative and they don't necessarily know how the ball is rolling on the other side. And so you kind of have to gently find a way to rein them in and say, here's the big picture, and you don't want to say in so many words, we know what we're doing here, but we appreciate your help. So it's kind of a delicate balance of, we appreciate your help. However, we need you to do it this way instead of taking a leadership role at this event, for yourself. So it's almost taking too much initiative as a volunteer. So
I've seen it. I've seen with some groups, you would have a few who are really good and outgoing and energetic, and they tend to take the oxygen out of the room, so to speak. And I've had that happen to me where it took the pandemic in a recent, my last board I was with, for a member to say, you know what, my opinion just doesn't seem to matter. And I haven't been able to do much, which was a shock, and sometimes you just don't know, and they don't know to speak up, or they don't feel that like they have the opportunity to talk and express, hey, I want to do more, but it seems like you guys have it all under control, So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really telling. That's good. Who else would like to share?
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm with the American Counseling Association, and we're a professional membership association. So our board, while they're volunteers, they're voted in by the membership. And what we're finding out, kind of where Leslie was going, is that we have a strategic plan and we know the direction that we're going in. And each board member seems to have their own personal strategic plan, which may not be in alignment with ours. And so they're spending a lot of their time trying to either add to their CV, get their name out there, when it's not necessarily in alignment with where we need to go. So kind of where Leslie, it's like, yeah, they're they're running in a direction, it's just not necessarily in the direction that we need them to go in. And so we have charters, we share with them, remind them of what their responsibilities are. And it's still really hard to corral. I feel like we're herding cats a lot of the time.
Wow. That sounds like a challenge. Yeah. No, thank you, Angela, for sharing that. That's good to hear. It, yeah. I don't think I could add to that. It's you pretty much captured something.
Hey,
Good
Gary, I
Lord,
just can't stand the suspense. Did I successfully kill off that damn poll?
yeah, it's gone.
All right, thank you. Jeez.
Hey, this is Scott. I think one of the challenges is that officers are spread thin because they're on more than one board. You know, they don't know how to say no, and so they're on 4 different boards. And so that, you know,
They
I haven't made
volunteer.
it a thing. It's like, are you on? I mean, should be an intake question. Are you on any other boards? Sorry, you can't be on our board. But that's, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, people get busy. Even if it's the only board that they're on, people get busy and they don't seem to have time to even participate on their one board, let alone their 3 boards. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to? I'm not seeing any unmuting, so I am assuming that we're ready to get back to it. So I'm going to go back to sharing because we like to share. And you should see something that says polls. And participants now see my screen. Okay. That helps me. It gives me a little bit of a background. And I'm going to move on to part 2, and that is the meaning of leadership. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. This is my area of expertise. I've published a couple of books on it. I do a lot of talks at organizations about leadership. I help departments with their management and help them work together on how they interact as a unit and also individually. So that there's a lot in that area that I do. In fact, I'm meeting with about 17 managers next week from a pharmaceutical company to talk with them about this. First thing I just want to point out is that when you have this thing called leadership, and it's going really good, whether it's you're at an organization, a company, a firm, or whatever, there's some effects that Gallup has pointed out that employees or board members or volunteers, when they feel that they're being led, they have their needs fulfilled, performance barriers go down, they feel safe, and feelings of safety are also emotional safety. And there's something called psychological safety where they're free to express themselves without fear of retaliation or someone shaming them or telling them that they're wrong in a negative way. But there's an increase in collaboration and naturally increase in creativity and innovation. So these are some of the things that when you have leadership and things are going very well, this is what happens. But I want to show you another result of effective leadership, and it's kind of like a before and after. And I'm going to start off with a video. This is from Michael Jr. He's a comedian, and he does this thing where he stops in the middle of his show, and he'll ask questions to the audience. And he started talking to this one person who is he is a choir director. And I'll let you see the video. And when you watch this video, there's going to be a pause before it actually starts. I want you to think about how the audience reacts and just kind of experience it. You're going to see a blank screen that says something like real player, and it will kick on in a moment.
Let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Wow. That bro could sing.
All right. That is the first video. And that kind of reaction, what you saw from the audience, was pretty typical, I think, of what happens when people are just managing and, not really leading that well. Let me show you what happens when someone is leading.
Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
That video is like awesome when you're in a room of people and you can see everyone's faces, or if all of you were there. Usually what happens is during the first one, people are like, yeah, that's pretty good. The second one, it usually brings on this big smile, and people just, they get excited. And I did this for the 145th Airborne. It was a room full of cadets and officers. I think there was like crammed in this small space, like maybe 70 to 100 people. And they just started applauding and clapping. And it's like, it's a recording, but they were moved by the different way that was done. I'm going to wrap this part up with Michael Jr. He's going to say a quick commentary about that experience, about the before and after, the first one and the second one.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact, because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
Okay, so that's part of the difference. When you're applying leadership, you're helping people understand their why, empowering them, enabling them. And there's a great quotation by David Marquet. He was the commander of the nuclear submarine, the Santa Fe. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he turned his ship around, so to speak, which is kind of what he called his book, Turn the Ship Around, where he had the worst performing submarine in the Navy to the highest performing. And at the end of the book, he has all these accomplishments that change that would not have happened if he had not have changed the ship and their attitude and getting people to lead. Quotation here really captures it. Leadership is not about you, but other people. It's about creating a work environment in which people can be at their best. And the idea is that you want to avoid having the 2 or 3 people on your board or your committees run the whole thing and just take charge. They should be setting up the environment so that people can be at their best, so that they can act, and encouraging them to do so. And with leadership, there's some principles. And these are 7 principles. They're very basic. People, they're actually secrets. I call them secrets because you look at them, you understand them, but putting them into practice is a lot harder than it seems. There's something about these principles. The first 6, except for the last one, is all about other people. Believing in them, connecting with them, putting them first, giving up control, encouraging them to grow, and collaborating with them. It's all about other people. And the last one is about developing yourself. Leadership is not what a lot of people think it is, about motivating and being a cheerleader and trying to get people to, yeah, well, let me do this. Let me show you another video to kind of get the point. I got 100% in the chat, 100% agree. So thank you, Leslie, for sharing that. Mark also put that quote in the chat.
I have 4 kids. I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. I'm from Utah. And my 6-year-old son, Drew, a couple months ago, I'm sitting at my kitchen counter. If you were sitting there with me, I'm in my kitchen. I'm looking at my phone. I'm responding to an email or text. I'm not paying attention. The refrigerator's kind of back over here behind me, to my right. All of a sudden, I hear Drew. He's 6. He goes, "Dad, can you open the fridge?" No, he's 6. He can open the fridge. So I didn't look up. I just said, "Drew, you can open the fridge." And then I hear Drew behind me go, "Dad, open the fridge." And I'm like, what is going on? So I turn around, I look, and Drew is standing there holding 6 Matchbox cars in his hands. Now, as his leader, I have 2 options. I can motivate him. "Drew, you can do it, buddy. Try harder. Try harder." Or I can remove the obstacles and help him do his job. I said, "Drew, put the Matchbox cars down." He put them down. I said, "Now open the fridge." And he's like, "Oh my gosh, I did it." Like he's never done this before, right? That may be the simplest example I could give you, but I think it makes the point. Here's the truth. As leaders, we spend most of our time focused on motivation. And I think the reason we do is because it's easier. It doesn't require that much of you. It's pretty simple. If you think of leadership as just motivational cheerleading, you just cheer people on, right? Go get them, guys, run, go do it, go do it. Here's the problem. If there's a wall in the way, they don't need your cheerleading. They need you to move the wall, right? You can't just go, "No, run into the wall," and boom, they hit the wall. Okay, well, get back up, run faster this time. Like, put your shoulder into it. Maybe that wall will move. No, we have to actually move the wall, right? We have to figure out what's stopping our people. And here's the thing, there's times that it's systemic, right? Through the organization, you might go, what are the sticking points? And you might figure out some of those things that we need to clear the runway a little bit. But more often than not, leadership is individual. And so the way you figure that out with your people is you actually have to lock arms with your people. You have to get in the trenches with your people. You have to actually partner with your people and figure out what's stopping them. And it's about locking arms with them. Motivation is important, but it's overrated. How do you remove those obstacles? How do you remove those inhibitors? How do you make those people better so that they can show up and do the job well every single day? When you partner with your people, what you ultimately create is more leadership.
By the way, Ty, he ironically is a motivational speaker. He has something on YouTube every Monday, early in the morning. He'll post it. It's a Monday mantra, and it's about 1 minute long. They're kind of neat. It's a good way of kicking off your week to view those. So one important thing about that was removing barriers and making things easier for your board. And the way you go about doing that is you have to find out what those are. It may be you're a barrier, or it may be that they just don't know what they're supposed to do. I want to share something with you. And I spent moments just kind of wanted to show a little bit difference between traditional and contemporary leadership, and from the perspective of board members and working on a board. In the traditional side, when you're working with guests, when you're getting to know members, there's a tendency to get to know who they are, recognize their names. That's kind of like the standard. If you want to exceed the standard, you do a little bit of analysis, find out what are their needs. If you're going to encourage guests to become members, that's one way of doing it, and finding out what can the organization that you're with, association that you're with, what can they do to meet those needs, and getting to know and talking with them. And even with members, finding out what they want. One of the challenges in a lot of volunteer associations is they don't know what their members need. And taking the step of asking them, getting to know them, it's a lot for volunteers, it's a lot of work to do that, but it's well worth it. And if you have real live meetings and so forth, it's a great way of opportunity to get to know them. Here's a recruiting technique for this step, and that is announcing, oh, if anyone wants to run to be on the board, then go to this web link and you can run and be on the board. When you do that, there's a lot of people that they don't respond well to that, or they don't respond. It's not something that encourages them to do that. Really, what you need to do is you have to recruit for the board and ask specific members to join. Now, this is an extreme example that I'm going to give you of this. Yeah, the cattle call is no way to recruit. It's definitely true. I agree with that.
I couldn't stand it. I couldn't say nothing here. That's if nothing else, everybody write that down, commit that to memory, and then enjoy everything else. But my God, that's so important right there. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Feel free to pipe in, any of you. Well, I'm going to tell you about a guy named Richard Gearson. This was years ago, decades ago, in Tampa, Florida. It took place at the Tampa Club, of all places, and we actually had our chapter meetings there. And this is an extreme. So it's not something that works all the time, but Richard walked into the lounge. Now, the Tampa Club, there's various members, and they have all sorts of activities there and so forth. And he stops and he sees this guy, and the guy's name is Ed Nolan. In fact, he's the one that told me this story. And he walked up to Ed, Richard walked up to Ed, said, "Hey, what's your name?" "Ed." "Well, what do you do?" "I'm a consultant." "Great. Well, I need you to be the vice president of memberships for this ISPI organization and really step in and help us out." Ed went home, and his wife said, "Well, hey, how'd it go today?" He said, "I think I just got recruited to be a vice president of an association." He knew nothing about it. And I'll tell you something about Ed. To this day, that happened about 2004. he is still a member of a board somewhere. I think he's with the Association of Talent Development with one of their chapters. He's been on the board for them since the ISPI chapter broke up. So he never would have done this, never would have thought of it until Richard came up to him and just said, "Hey, what's your name?" That's an extreme, but people, if you ask, and to get permission to ask, you got to get to know them and find out more about them. And if they're a good fit, if they're good volunteers, and in your case, Leslie, it's, hey, would you run? Would you, or was it Angela? Was it you that had everyone voted? Yeah. So you would ask, you would, Angela, you say, hey, you should run for this position. And here's how I think it'll benefit you and how I think it'll benefit the company. And so it's a different way of viewing that. At the next level is this thing called assumed delegation. If you're the vice president of membership, you have your list of your job description, and you just follow that and just do stuff. But what doesn't happen is what I call empowered delegation. And that's where the president comes in, or the president-elect, where you actually would interact with the different VPs, the different people on the board, and ask them what they can do. How would you foresee doing your role beyond the job description that you have here, and encourage them on a regular basis to expand and to develop. There's related to that is this last level. There's a tendency for boards to run tactically. And what I mean by that is a problem comes up, the board addresses it. Problem comes up, the board addresses it, so forth and so on. But there's a switch when you start working strategically. So you set some initiatives, and if you're the president, you would work with the different board members and saying, how can you take this initiative, what we're trying to do, and relate it to your role. You get people to buy in and encourage them. And if they need help, you get them the right level of help. So there's a different way of working. And this, on the traditional side, there's a lot of assumptions. On the contemporary side, there's a lot of getting to know people and doing analysis, finding out what your gaps are, and then working on that. Before I go to the new life cycle, what questions do you have?
Well, Gary, it's not a question so much other than, what do you think about this? So in a professional association where I had a leadership role quite some time ago, I saw the worst case of empowered delegation. So the definition you've got there on the board, the summary, enable, autonomy, and coach. And the president of this organization stopped at enable autonomy. In fact, that person's direction was, you're smart people, you know what to do. Which is, you're a smart child, you probably know how to swim, welcome to the deep end. And it kind of takes me back, to the videos there with Michael J. About not having the why, to determine the what. And that was a lesson that I saw maybe like 12 or 14 years ago, and I still haven't shaken that nightmare. So.
Yeah, that's really a great description of assumed delegation, a good clarification. When you give the direction, this is your job, go do it. But you need, on the other side, on the contemporary side, you're actually trying to enable autonomy. Enable autonomy doesn't mean it's up to you and just go do it. It's really setting that person up to where they can start. It's like giving them permission to make autonomous decisions. I had early on in my association career, I didn't know I was able to do certain things. And didn't feel like I had permission. And so the president took out this wand and waved it and said, there, I just waved the magic wand. You now have permission and I'll help you along the way, but you can make autonomous decisions. She didn't use those words, but she really worked at empowering me and removing barriers, whether self-imposed or real, and coached me along the way. So that's a way of it. I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because that really just helps me distinguish those two. I'm going to move on to what I call the new life cycle. And this is a different way of viewing the life cycle of having volunteers. And it may or may not be applicable in your particular situation, but it might. So I'm going to throw this at you. And we're going to go through the life cycle for Juan as being an association member. He starts out as a guest and he's trying to decide, should I join as a member or not? Is this right for me? And for whatever reasons, he decides, hey, I'm going to become a member, and joins and is active in the membership, participates with events. And later he thinks, well, you know what? I think I'm going to join a committee. Or he's recruited to be on a committee. And so for a year, he's a committee member. Then he was so into that, he wanted to become involved in the programming, but he wasn't ready to run the whole thing. So he started out as an assistant vice president. And the vice president actually helped him develop the skills needed to run it as the vice president. So next year, he becomes the VP of programming. Now, here's what's interesting. From VP programs, you could use the chat. Where do you think it goes from here? I'm just curious. Like, what would be the next thing from VP of programs? Yeah. A board VP, ideally another VP or more. Yeah, another VP. So that does two things. One, if Juan moves over to another VP role, it's a different experience. And it's a way of engaging and eliminates or minimizes some burnout. Something else happened. He went back to being a member, but this is a life cycle. He spent a year off the board, and then he went back on the board after some time off. And this idea of not always being on the board for a number of years it's a different idea, and it's a way of minimizing burnout. So I'm giving you a board structure. The idea is, with this concept, is that you limit the number of terms that someone could be in a particular position. So for example, in this hypothetical board, you can spend up to 2 years to be on a committee and then move to a different committee or move back to being a member. If you're going to chair a committee, you would do it for 2 years. You would need at least 1 year to get into it, and a second year to really run it. And then for the VP positions, there's a couple of ways that you could do it. You could have them limit their terms, or you could do 1 year as a AVP, 1 year as a VP. You can have them switch. And then, of course, a year as the president-elect, president, and then past president. So in one scenario, someone spends 2 years on a committee, 2 years as the chair, 2 years as a VP, 1 year as the president-elect, president, and then 1 year as the past president. And let me get out my calculator. carry the 2, 9. So that's 9 years. 9 years on a board. And what I've experienced when someone has spent that much time on the board is that there's one of a couple of scenarios. They could take over the board and become a board of 2 or 3 people, or they burn out. And when a board is reliant on 2 or 3 people, and those 2 or 3 people leave, either someone steps up, or the board and the organization, the association, that it begins to die off. And so here's a different scenario. Someone's a committee chair, an AVP, then a VP, then spends 2 years back in the membership, but then says, you know what, I want to go back and be on the board, spend a year as the president-elect, then the president, then the past president, and then 2 years back as a member, and then back as a VP. So here you have someone active, and they spend 7 years on the board, 4 years off. It's a way of trying to avoid burnout. And when you have a model sort of like this one, then you tend to have more people on the board, and more people on the board where you're moving in different positions. You avoid people being stagnant, and you enable people to be refreshed and not being burned out and carrying the weight. So this is just an example of one model of board levels. And the AVP VP model is really good because it gives the AVP an opportunity to ease into the role. If they want to do it, they're really ambitious to do it, but they're not ready. It's a great way of getting ready. So you might have an example board sort of like this, where you have various committees, you have AVP positions, VP, presidents, past presidents, and managing something like that actually is better, having a larger board where you lead people, you set them up for success, you get to know them, coach them if you're in a higher level position, and really nurture them to be effective at doing at volunteering and working at this level. So that is it. That's all I got. That's what I want to do now, is give you an opportunity to comment, share, and talk a little bit about some of your experiences.
So I'd like to put Leslie right on the hot seat there. She put a couple comments about her board, and Gary, just refresh my memory. So Leslie works at a traditional service-oriented nonprofit reach, a little bit different from associations. So while her board is more about that fiduciary responsibilities and strategic government, stuff like that, which a little bit different from associations where the board actually has to work for a living. I love your comments though on her observations, particularly about filling the president role.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like an interesting problem. One thing I would love to do, if I had a situation where all this weight is put on the president, is take that role and the role description and divvy it up some. In other words, limit the president's role so that they're not in a position to have to do all the work.
Well,
And that's
we do try to make it as easy as possible for her. But it is funny because you're describing this life cycle for the board, and it's exactly, because our board loves to serve, but it's that lead role, So we do make it as easy as possible. And her words were, "I'll do it if you do the work and just, give me what I need." And so, but that is exactly the life cycle of our board. It's
Cool.
interesting when you said that, but yes.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's almost like you have the inverse where the board is supporting the president and making sure that the president has what she needs
Well,
to
it's
be
really the staff.
successful. Oh, the staff. Okay.
Mark knows.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
What other
We're
comments?
we're a literacy
Oh.
nonprofit.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
What other comments do you guys have about this, about leadership, about your experiences, about some of the challenges that you're facing?
I have a question because I am totally on board with everything you're saying about leadership. How do you train volunteers who think they are good leaders to be leaders? How do you get them on board without totally turning them off?
That's how do, yeah. So tell me a little bit more. And
Most of our board members are either counselor educators or they are counselors. And so they feel that they are experts in their field, which means they're experts in every field. And so then when someone who is not a counselor kind of comes in, saying, okay, there we go, Mark, I will send them to the training. You know, you try to give them a few tips and techniques, and they're not even open to it because who are you? You're not.
oh wow. Yeah, so there's a challenge right there, is getting, if they are resistant, that's very difficult. When doing coaching, the types of clients that I avoid are the ones that don't want to be coached. It's not possible. What I would try to do is come in a neutral stance and talk about, I bring in someone to talk about leadership and have them participate in the hopes that they pick up some of these smaller points. And by the way, I teach leadership at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and I had the students interview several people in leadership development. I'm doing a talk tomorrow, by the way, on that, on their research for a chapter. One of the things that they found from these leadership developers is that the people that are resistant and not wanting to learn anything or develop their leadership are the ones that say, I already know this, and so I don't need to do it. But they have blinders on, and they don't see their challenges. Now, in some organizations, they do stuff like 360, and you've got to do it right if you're going to do stuff like that. But sometimes it's giving the right feedback to the person, but that's like in a corporate setting. Maybe it's a little different than volunteers. So yeah, that is definitely a challenge when you get someone who is resistant to learning, especially about leadership and trying new ways of doing things.
Yeah, if you miss anything, you're a real key takeaway in there. If someone is you proposing to a leadership role is not interested in leadership or the path to get there, then it's time to move on and look at somebody else. Let them go succeed elsewhere or screw up somebody else's organization. One of the philosophies that they have, like about PDCHR, is, I say my audience is these groups, but the audience, the constituents really are, and the people who are interested in actually leading better, and not harder. If they're not interested in it, well, good luck with that. Hope you don't, screw up your life and your entire community. But I'm not going to teach you morals, ethics, or incentivize you. That has to be in place already. You actually have to give a damn about what you're doing. Before ideally we know that before we ask somebody to do that. It's a wonderful theory.
Yeah, I think I saw briefly Mary Ann raised her hand.
Hi, Gary. This has been
Oh, Mary
dynamite.
Glenn.
Yeah,
Sorry.
hi. No, that's okay. I go by Mary Fisher, but there's a lot of Mary Fisher, so I stick my maiden name in there. And I'm in the South, so you can't be Mary without a middle name. So this has been fantastic. I'm not on any boards, except I bore Mark from time to time. I run a business, we help people, and leadership is our focus. And this has been fantastic. What I heard, and I apologize, I didn't see your name, the young lady that just spoke, but I had a thought to share, if it's okay. And that
Please.
is sometimes that, that one-on-one or that you're doing it wrong, we're all adults. And even if we're acting like kids, we don't want to be called out on that. So where I have found this work is when there's number one, an accepted time when the group comes together. So group training, you can say things that you can't do individually, right? And I think you alluded to that, Mark talked about as well. So there might be a chance for you to say, hey, we're so excited, to come together and review our mission and do that in a very positive way. And then the second is to empower people. People want to be acknowledged and recognize that they're working their tails off on a board, especially unpaid, right? So it's like, please just appreciate me. So you have to have, I would say, that any nonprofit has to be a place where the people who participate feel completely appreciated, but also led. And not led like your leadership sucks or your communication skills are terrible, because that's subjective. It could be, hey, here's the 1, 2, 3 things we're focusing on. Let's have a chat and see how it's going. I just recently was on a mastermind call where I had a gentleman who owned a company. He was the board of directors. He hired a new president to the company, a senior level general. Okay, so like retired military. So 2 retired military guys doing that. And they're literally having a power struggle because they don't want to be in each other's space. I mean, actually, the guy who owns the company wants to be involved, and the other guy's like, leave me alone. So it's understanding, what does autonomy look like to you? And how can I make sure that our objectives are happening? But it gets personal fast. So I would say if you create it in a group environment where it's an acknowledgement environment and it's a retooling environment, then nobody feels made wrong. And you got to give 100 appreciations for every critical. Once you do that, then people are generally open to more critical. So Mark might think that's baloney, but that's my 2 cents. And this is wonderful.
Well, the 2 most powerful words, and is just this, and I'll say this for you because of your comments. Thank you. And so thank you for sharing what you just shared. There's this thing, especially in the corporate world, there's this belief that there's like a limited amount of thank you and showing appreciation that you can give in a period of time. And that's, we don't do enough of that. We don't. If we spend our life, someone opens the door, thank you. Someone takes us to a table, thank you. Someone hands us a menu, thank you. If you just get in the habit of that and just thank people for small things. And I had a VP say, well, I pay these people and my thanks is their paycheck. And it's like, no, you get paid as compensation for doing the work. It's not a paid form of thank you. They're 2 different things. So I really appreciate what you just said, but it's so important. And the worst thing that anyone could do is they work really hard at doing something like in memberships, and they put together a welcome, and then no one uses it. I mean, it's just like, why did I bother doing this? And I've seen that happen. And when people get feedback from other board members, from all the other volunteers, then it does amazing things to encourage that type of innovation and creativity, and all that list I showed you at the beginning. So yeah, those were really good comments. I love the idea of bringing someone in like Mary Glenn or Gary DePaul to talk about leadership to the group, and not put someone on the spot, so to speak, because what they can see and they can learn vicariously from other members, other volunteers that experience a leadership program and education that way. So very cool. Oh, Ben, yeah. I just saw the little raised hand symbol. That's so cool. Yeah, if you would, go ahead, Ben. You have to unmute.
Just have a little
There we
soap opera to share regarding another board I'm on. It's for a social organization, not a professional organization. And so the existing board over the past couple of years basically shut down the organization because of COVID, because, you know, typically our social involves contact indoors. And so we had a bit of a coup to elect a new board this year, a board that would be willing to do at least virtual events, and as soon as it was healthy to do so, to have in-person events. So we have a meeting tonight of that new board. So it'll be interesting to see how we actively tackle the problems, as opposed to the previous board that was just in a state of limbo. They put the organization totally on hold.
I love
So,
that. You know, I need to bring that up to some people in Charlotte, because when the pandemic hit, there's a chapter here, they just stopped doing anything. No virtual events. I think they tried one virtual event and then nothing. And so if you go to their website, you would get the impression that they're still active and they will take your membership money. But the last event they had was say it's 2000, it was August of 2020. And
yeah,
it's just we
well,
need to find a new board for them.
yeah, well, their argument was, well, we can't hold a social event or we'll probably lose money because not enough people will come. But if you're doing nothing, you're basically wasting your membership's dues if
Yeah.
you're not providing anything to them for being members.
Yeah, yeah. And it goes back to your mission, you know, what you're trying to accomplish. And it's like, if you can't achieve it in person at this time, then what can you do virtually? What
Right,
are
and
the ways?
the mission of the organization is not to protect the treasury.
Yes,
It's to
yes.
use that money for the benefit of the members.
Yeah. And I've seen boards that were all about building up money in the coffer, so to speak. And that was so important. It's just like, why are you building it up? You're a nonprofit. You're not spending it. You're getting money year over year. Why not put that to good use? So yeah, no, I love that statement. Thanks, Ben. That's pretty cool.
And everyone in the organization, you know, they're volunteers, they're joy to be with, but it was just different approach to the dealing with the pandemic. And I'm pretty conservative and wearing masks and everything, but I want to have the some activities, even if it's an outdoor picnic.
Awesome. Very, very cool.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It kind of goes back to, you know, something Gary was saying before. When we're talking about the traditional versus more modern approach to leadership. But it was slide 10, and I forget exactly the phrase there. But the thing about what is it the members need, you know, and I can just, you know, I don't know, Ben, I don't know your board or the old board, but I just have this, you know, it's like, well, the board needs to feel comfortable by making sure that the treasury's fat. What is it the members want right now? I'm curious if that question was even asked of the members or even amongst ourselves. Did we just assume social was the main value that the board or that, you know, the leadership was delivering?
Yeah, I mean, we assumed that what the members wanted was what they had been showing up for in mass the past few years. You know, that seemed to be successful.
Very
We
cool.
actually, so PDCHR, when all that started, you know, we had to do the transition just like everybody else from co-located to online. And Bill Pearsall, who's on the call with us, and he was the president of PDCHR's board at the time, and still a member of the board, because he's rotated back down to a member. He held a town hall, actually a series of 3 town halls, talking about COVID as a disruptor and as an opportunity for all the organizations, in our constituency to relook at the needs of the members. What's the value being delivered here? Do we need to continue delivering on the same value proposition we assumed, or is this actually an opportunity to even reestablish or reevaluate that? So anyway, it was fun doing some town halls.
There you go. Well, Mark, why don't we wrap it up? Seems that as people are beginning to go. It's just a little bit beyond the top of the hour. And before you wrap it up, I wanted to thank all of you, the ones who participated. Thank you. And it was great to see some new faces. So I will hand it over to you, Mark, to put a bow on this.
All right, absolutely. So a little bit of homework for everybody. First off, if you want to check out the rest of Gary's writings, I put a link straight to him at Amazon. And if you're not going through Smile.Amazon, then you should be donating some of your money elsewhere. But anyway, so there's what's Gary's books online, so you can check out some more of his goodness. Also, here's the PDCHR standing pitch to please come back. 2 things actually I'm going to ask you to do is, first off, I just dropped in a link to a survey. Please click on that just so it's open. Fill it out when you can. It should only take you a minute or 2 tops. So it just helps us keep getting better and getting better. On Friday, all of you will receive an email thank you for your attendance, plus those who already built out. And it'll include a link to some of the resources and who attended, some other goodness like that, so you can follow up on your own, and also it'll be a link to this YouTube recording if you just haven't had enough of it. 1 month from now, we are continuing to talk about the volunteer pipeline. So roughly the same subject area, the whole volunteer newbie to organizational leadership pipeline. And we're going to have a panel of practitioners doing this. So some folks, compliments of Volunteer Hampton Roads, and some folks from the, here we go, Southeastern Volunteer Administrators, Southeastern Virginia Association of Volunteer Administration. Something like that. People get paid to manage volunteers. So I have a panel from those folks talking again about what they've seen in their journey right here in town on the way to building volunteers into leaders, or in some cases not being able to do that. So the link is there. You can register right now. It is free, other than 90 minutes plus or minus of your time. So with that, unless there's any particular questions for me, we will indeed declare victory here. I know you set your calendar aside for 1:30, so Gary and I have gifted you 21 minutes. How wonderful is that? So anyways, yay, I see some stuff. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm just going to kind of hang out here for a while. You'll see, if you're still here, you'll see a slide go up so I can close out our recording and stuff like that. But other than that, thank you so much. And I hope to see you back at one of these very, very soon. Take care.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mark. Awesome.
It was awesome. So
You're welcome.
Truly. That was great. Great content. I just went on Amazon. Glad to meet you.
Oh,
Really
thanks.
excellent.
all righty. All right.
Well,
Thanks,
thank
everybody.
you, Mark.
Thank you, Gary. Wonderful. All right. We'll see y'all.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your week.
Take care. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, now I will check out Leslie's. organization.
Yeah, it's really cool. All right, for those who have just dropped in on the YouTube and are still watching at this point, I hope you got a lot of goodness out of this. Take a look at events.pdchr.org. Most of our events are free. Most of them run about 90 minutes, so you just got to take some notes, take a little time, and learn a little bit about how to lead smarter, not harder. Hope you can join us soon.